So you think Africa needs industrial revolution?
It does. But before industrial revolution, you need a mental revolution. Without a mental revolution, you can't drive an industrial revolution.
If you had a chance to change one thing in Africa, what will it be?
It would be seeking to change their belief system, building confidence in themselves, because it is that which is going to change their attitude, so that they see themselves as people equal to other people. If there is any weakness in us, it is not because we are black. That I refuse. Color is only skin deep, or even less than skin deep. So that is not a problem. The problem is here.
We had an insightful conversation yesterday.
Yeah.
But there's one thing you never told me about yourself, who you are and what you really represent.
I'm Patisa Nyati. Patisa Nyati is a historical name. Historical in the sense that in our culture, you don't just pick up a name from a basket with very little meaning. In our culture, names have a meaning, they have a context. Sometimes they carry wishes, they carry prayers. In my case, Patisa meant we are just following others. We are not very certain if this venture is going to succeed. What venture was that? My mother used to be scary. So they come to a point where they no longer were certain they were going to have children with my father. That's the origin. So I siyaphathisa nje abanye. Siyahamba, but not very sure if this child is going to survive. But today I'm celebrating 70 years. Being a worldview. It's about the way we relate to each other as human beings, one, how we relate to environment, and that environment is terrestrial, but it is also cosmic.
How important is African spirituality to Africans?
It is very important because it is the one that has power of healing. It has the power of seeing the future. You know your past, and it sort of preserves our heritage. Those people who are spirit mediums are the people who understand our past. Through mediumship is about communicating the past to the present, so that we take our culture, our language, our practices, our beliefs to the future, and that way maintain our identity. That's critically important. We are losing it now because our spirituality was attacked, because it was deemed pagan, it was devilish, demonic, denigrated, despised, and then we lost it. You remember the question was, where did we lose it?
Yeah.
When we lost that sense of spirituality, we lost it altogether. Right, and that was our anchor in terms of our past, in terms of our worldview, in terms of our cultural practices, and especially identifying that which underpins our culture. It is not enough to document cultural practices. Equally important, if not more important, is to identify what informs those cultural practices. And sometimes I note we fall short. We concentrate on dancing, but we don't see beyond the dance, its expressions, the symbolism that is inherent in a dance. That we seem to be missing.
If Africans living in Africa has lost their identity, how much more than Africans living in the diaspora, Africans that were taken from Africa to the diaspora? I mean, if we have lost it, how about them?
It's worse. It's worse because they've sunk, they are submerged, they are sinking. For them, even the small child who grows up will not speak their indigenous language. Out in Britain, they will not speak that language. And yet, losing a language is not just losing a medium of communication. You are losing the culture. Language is, yes, one for communication, but equally important, it is transmitting our culture. And it is a reservoir for our culture. That's what matters. So when we look at a word, it is expressive of culture. Very important. So fulfilling two very important roles. One is communication. So like we are communicating, it's through language.
Yeah.
But when you look at the English language, it carries English culture. Doesn't carry your culture. No, it will not. It will not.
Do you think Africans living in the diaspora should return back home? I'm talking about those who went through slavery. Do you think it's time for them to return back to the motherland?
Perhaps some, I think they would have to be given a choice. There are some who have sort of acculturated out there where they are. There are others who may come back, but let's give them a choice. There is one thing that we might stand to benefit in terms of the knowledge that they have, certain culture, certain ethos, attitude towards work, they could, management, they could help us and uplift, because we need a better understanding of these issues to manage change, but allowing our African issues to form the foundation. That's what matters, the foundation. You can't build a strong house on a weak foundation. Yeah. So African culture has always been at accepting, incorporating new things, but building them on a solid African foundation. But now we want to build everything from scratch, foundation foreign, the superstructure foreign, then things begin to fall apart.
Things are really falling apart in Africa, which means that Africa got a problem.
Africa is a problem. There's no doubt about that. It's because Africa assumed independence was the end. My view is independence should have been the beginning, where you take stock of what did colonization do to us, what did slavery do to us. Taking time, not in a hurry, and then come up with strategies to reverse colonialism. Otherwise, independence just allows perpetuation of colonial relations. It's not about color. A black man can be as oppressive, running an oppressive system. We should have said, how did they oppress us? How do we reverse oppression? How do we reverse repression? Right from slavery through to colonization. It was not going to be an easy task, but that task was not undertaken. So we continue with colonial relations, but now being driven by the black man. And I remember saying, what we got is the right to drive a train. But the train that we are driving is not our train. We need to be drivers, but drivers of our own train. That's what is missing.
What do you think is the harm that has been caused by colonization?
One is to make us lose confidence in ourselves. Without confidence, you will not tackle much because you have dismissed yourself. When you meet some small challenge, right now, look at COVID, how we were looking at COVID. African countries generally did not come up with any solution, any remedies. It is because they've lost the confidence in themselves. They are looking up to India, looking up to China, Russia, Britain, Americas. But in the past, there is a book which I'm doing on the impact of COVID-19 on African culture. They had their own remedies, symbolically dealing with a pandemic. COVID-19 is not the first pandemic to hit Africa, but it hits Africa at a time when Africans look elsewhere for solutions. That is a disaster for Africans, but it's not restricted to COVID-19. So it means all challenges, we are weak. We say, they will solve. We just fold our arms. They will help us. That, yes, at a cost. Medication, even when it is diabetes, insulin is not manufactured in Zimbabwe, nor is it manufactured in Ghana. You don't manufacture it in Nigeria. So we become a market, a very good market. Yes, we have our herbs if you look around, but you can't patent these herbs because their arrangement is that you patent only the commodity whose active ingredient you have identified and extracted. But we don't operate like that. We crush everything, the entire root, we drink that. But they say, no, come up with an active ingredient. Our knowledge doesn't allow for that. So they will patent all these medicines and then we'll be buying them from them. You see, that's the danger.
So you think Africa needs industrial revolution?
It does, but before industrial revolution, you need a mental revolution. Without a mental revolution, you can't drive an industrial revolution. We should be clear about what starts. It's here. Not decolonizing the mind first, because it's the mind that does. When I say we have an inferiority complex, it's the mind which says so-and-so is more superior, we are more inferior. It's all in the mind, and you believe it. If you believe it, we act as we believe. We do as we believe. Yeah, that's what happens. That's the tragedy of Africa.
If you had a chance to change one thing in Africa, what will it be?
It would be seeking to change their belief system, building confidence in themselves, because it is that which is going to change their attitude, so that they see themselves as people equal to other people. If there is any weakness in us, it is not because we are black. That I refuse. Color is only skin deep, or even less than skin deep. So that is not a problem. The problem is here. It is in the mind. When you perceive yourself as inferior, you will act accordingly. So that would be the first thing. Build confidence in the people. Know your history, the things that our people achieved. Some people don't know much about Africa, the discoveries that were made in Africa. If perhaps they access to those, they got to know, it will give them inspiration, motivation, and build their shattered egos.
Give us a brief of discoveries in Africa that you think Africans don't know.
Africans were, if you look, all came here, Africa. Pythagoras, school children know about Pythagoras' theorem. Pythagoras is a man, remember? He came to Africa to learn. When they were building pyramids, and he came to learn about that. All those things, measurement, and from our language, it's in Ndebele. You can clearly see they were in Uganda, they know this is where it started, the measurement. The forearm was a unit of measure. Mathematics here in Africa. But the Africans don't know that. To a point, they won't even accept it now. That all those things started here in Africa. I had an American friend, an ambassador, who said, and we used to agree, I took him around this marketplace. How were Africans stupefied? That was the question. And I think I answered that question. We were stupefied. When you look at the science that was here, before other people came to colonize us, before they came to enslave us, it all started in Africa. Everybody seems to agree that Africa is the cradle of humanity.
Yeah.
So before people went out of Africa, they were not going there as tabula rasa. They were carrying knowledge and built upon that knowledge, African knowledge. But that is not well known in our schools. We are not teaching that. We are still perpetuating this colonial education which sees Africans as having achieved next to nothing.